You ever get a gift that just hit different? Like, not flashy or expensive, but something that made you feel seen? That's what happened to me on my birthday this year, only. What started as a thoughtful gesture from a close friend turned into a full-blown argument with my wife. And honestly, I still don't know if I'm overreacting or not. The gift showed up in a simple cardboard box, nothing fancy. My buddy Jackson handed it to me at the tail end of a small birthday get-together we had at our place. Just close friends, some takeout, beers, and laughter echoing in the background. When I opened it, I didn't say much at first. I just stared. Inside were 3 wooden frames, each holding a different quote or poem, printed over images that matched the mood of the words. One was a verse by Rainer Maria Rilke about embracing uncertainty. Another was a quote from a lesser-known American author about friendship and loyalty. The third was a poem Jackson wrote himself back in college that I'd once told him helped me during a rough time in my life. It wasn't just the content, it was the timing, the thought, the fact that he remembered. I'm not the kind of guy who gets emotional over presents, but this one? It hit me right in the chest. Jackson and I go way back, since high school. We've seen each other through some dark stretches. Divorce, job losses, anxiety spells, you name it. I know how much effort he puts into avoiding emotional expression, so the fact that he'd chosen something so personal, it meant more than I could put into words. I think he knew that too. He didn't linger, didn't make a big deal out of it. Just gave me a small smile, clinked his bottle to mine, and moved on. After everyone left, I sat at the kitchen table, the frame still in the box in front of me. My wife, Lauren, leaned over my shoulder, looked them over, and gave a quiet, "That's sweet." I nodded. She didn't say much else that night, and honestly, I didn't need her to. Sometimes a moment is its own thing. You don't need to wrap it in commentary. The next day, I found the perfect spot for them on the shelf in my home office. They fit right in, quiet, meaningful, just like the message behind them. I'd catch myself glancing at them while working, and every time I did, it gave me this grounded feeling. Like someone had seen who I was and put it into frames. I didn't even mind that the images were a bit grainy or pixelated. That was just part of it. Like a favorite hoodie that's faded at the sleeves, imperfect, but comforting. It was a few days later when Lauren brought it up again. She came into the office while I was going through emails, leaned against the doorway with her arms crossed, and said, "You know, those images would look a lot better if we just printed them in higher resolution. I could do it in 5 minutes." I glanced over at the frames and back at her. "I get that," I said slowly, "but I kind of like them how they are. It's not about how sharp they look. Jackson made them himself. He picked those images, those prints. It's part of the gift." Lauren gave a small shrug and said, "I'm just saying, it wouldn't change the content. Same quotes, same layout, just better quality." I shook my head. "Yeah, but that's like changing the brush strokes in a painting. Even if it looks better, it's not the same." She didn't push the topic after that, not that day. I figured she got where I was coming from. Turns out, I figured wrong. About a week later, I came home from work a little earlier than usual. The house was quiet. Lauren was upstairs, probably on a call or reading. I headed into my office like I always do, mostly out of habit. I set my keys down, slid my laptop bag under the desk, and turned to glance at the shelf. And then I froze. Something was off. It took a second to register, but I knew it almost instantly. The frames were there. Same spot. Same images at first glance. But something about them felt sterile, clean in a way that didn't sit right with me. I leaned in closer. The graininess was gone. The faint printer texture on the paper had changed. I touched one gently, and my stomach turned. She'd done it. Lauren had reprinted the images and replaced them. Same quotes, same layout, just like she said. But not the same. Not to me. I stood there, just staring for what felt like a full minute. The warmth I used to feel when I looked at them had disappeared. The personality had been scrubbed out. I opened the back of one of the frames, hoping maybe, just maybe, she just slid the new print over the original, like a cover. But no, it was gone. I walked out of the office and found her in the kitchen, wiping down the counter. She looked up at me and smiled. "Hey, you're home early." I didn't smile back. "You replaced the pictures." She blinked. "Yeah, I told you I was going to print new ones. I kept the originals. They're in a folder in the closet upstairs. I didn't throw them away. You told me, sure, but I said I didn't want that. Remember? We talked about this." Her smile faded. "I thought you'd be fine with it once you saw how much better they looked." I just stared at her. You thought I'd be fine with you going behind my back to change something that meant a lot to me? You knew how I felt about those prints, Lauren. Her tone shifted, got a little sharper. It's the same gift, Owen. I didn't touch the quotes or the poems. I just made them look better. It's not like I changed the meaning. I could feel the frustration bubbling up in my chest, but I tried to keep it steady. But you did change it. You changed what it meant to me by ignoring the part where I told you it was important to leave it as it was. This wasn't about aesthetics. It was about what Jackson gave me, his effort, the imperfections, the fact that it came from him. You turned it into something polished and impersonal, like it needed to be fixed. She folded her arms, her face tightening. You're being ridiculous. I didn't do this to upset you. I was trying to help. Most people would appreciate someone taking the time to improve a gift. I took a breath and let it out slowly. Maybe. But most people aren't me. And this wasn't your gift to fix. She looked away then, jaw clenched, and we stood in silence for a moment. The air between us was heavy, filled with the kind of tension that doesn't come from yelling, but from knowing something just shifted and it's not easily undone. I walked out of the kitchen, back to the office, and sat in the chair. The frame stared back at me sharp, clean, perfect, and completely hollow. I didn't feel angry so much as I felt erased. That night, we barely spoke. Lauren stayed upstairs, said she had work to catch up on, but I knew better. We were both nursing our own versions of hurt. Me, because something personal had been tampered with despite my clear feelings. Her, probably because she felt unappreciated or misunderstood. Maybe both. I didn't sleep much. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying our conversation over and over, wondering if I'd overreacted, wondering if she really did believe she was doing something kind and thoughtful, or if there was something deeper going on. Maybe a need to control things. Maybe she couldn't stand that something imperfect had a place of value in our home. The next morning, the silence between us lingered like a fog. We moved around each other like distant roommates. No eye contact, just tight-lipped civility. After she left for work, I went into the closet she mentioned. It didn't take long to find the folder, tucked neatly behind a stack of board games we hadn't touched in years. I opened it slowly, like I was unearthing something fragile. There they were, the original prints. The paper was thinner, the images softly pixelated, just as I remembered. But holding them in my hands again, I felt that quiet weight settle back over me. These were what Jackson had chosen. This was his version of love, of friendship. Unpolished, yes, but real. I didn't cry, but something inside me cracked a little. Not just for the gift, but for the fact that the person closest to me didn't seem to understand why it mattered so much. Or maybe worse, understood and did it anyway. Later that day, I texted Jackson. Hey man, quick question. The prints you gave me, did you design those yourself? He replied a few minutes later. Yeah. Sourced the quotes, edited the images, printed them at home. Took a while, honestly. Wasn't sure if it had come across the right way, but figured you'd get it. I stared at his message for a long moment, my chest tightening. He had put time into it. Real time. Real care. And Lauren had unknowingly, or maybe knowingly, wiped that away for the sake of aesthetics. When she came home that evening, I was sitting on the couch with the original prints laid out on the coffee table. She saw them immediately. Her expression shifted. Not angry. Just wary. I found them, I said. She nodded, placing her bag down by the door. Okay. I looked at her, really looked at her. Jackson made them himself. Chose the quotes, the images, printed them. He spent time on it, Lauren. She sat down across from me, her shoulders tight. I didn't know. I know, I said. But that's kind of the problem, isn't it? You didn't ask. You just assumed you knew better. Her eyes flicked toward the prints. I wasn't trying to disrespect him or you. I honestly thought I was helping. I get that, I said quietly. But help isn't help if it's not what the other person wants. You saw something imperfect and thought fixing it would make it more valuable. But it already had value. You just didn't see it. She looked away, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't mean to take that away from you. And for a moment, I saw the regret on her face, the kind that doesn't come from being caught in the wrong, but from finally understanding why it mattered. Still, the damage had been done, and I wasn't sure how or if we could frame things back the way they were. The next few days felt like we were both walking on eggshells, but not because either of us was still angry. If anything, we were being too careful, tiptoeing around each other, afraid to poke the bruise we'd both helped create. Lauren had offered to switch the original prints back in. I told her I'd do it myself. Not out of spite, just because I needed to. It was my way of reclaiming something that had been quietly taken from me. I needed to touch the frames, feel the old prints in my hands again, place them back where they belonged, with the care Jackson had intended. Maybe it was symbolic. Maybe it was petty. But it mattered to me. The day I did it, I didn't make a production out of it. I didn't announce anything. I just closed my office door, took my time, and swapped each one out like I was handling old photographs of someone I'd lost. Afterward, I sat in the room alone for a while, the late afternoon light creeping across the floor, and I let myself breathe again. But I could still feel the distance between Lauren and me growing, like we were on opposite sides of a widening crack in the pavement. This wasn't just about some framed prints anymore. It was about why she thought it was okay to go against something I'd clearly said no to. About how easy it had been for her to make that decision without me. One night, a few days later, we were getting ready for bed, brushing teeth, folding clothes, the usual quiet bedtime routine. Out of nowhere, she said, "Do you think I don't respect you?" I looked over, surprised. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring down at her hands. "I think," I said carefully, "that you sometimes believe your way is the better way. Even when I tell you how something makes me feel." She nodded slowly. "That's not what I want to be like." "I know," I said. "But intent and impact aren't always the same thing." There was a long pause before she said, "I guess I thought you were being sentimental. Like, overly sentimental." And I didn't get it. But then I saw your face when you found out, and I realized I'd done something that couldn't be undone. I sat beside her. It wasn't about the pictures. It was about being heard, and trusted to feel what I feel. She leaned against my shoulder, just for a second. "I don't want us to keep missing each other like this." "Then don't override me," I said gently, "even when you think you're helping." She nodded again, her voice soft. "Okay." And I believed her. At least in that moment, I did. But something inside me had shifted too. Not in a dramatic, earth-shattering way, but in the quiet way you start to guard a part of yourself. I'd learned that even the people who love you most can make decisions for you when they think they know best. And that hurts in a very specific, hard-to-explain way. The prints were back where they belonged, but something else was still out of place. Some things you just can't unsee, like the moment someone close to you looks at something meaningful and decides, without malice, that it needs fixing. In the weeks that followed, Lauren and I slowly found our rhythm again. We went back to sharing grocery lists, folding laundry, debating what to watch after dinner. Outwardly, things looked normal, but I noticed the silence more than I used to. The kind that creeps in where closeness used to be. She made more of an effort, asking my opinion more often, checking in before making decisions, even over things that didn't really matter. I appreciated it. I did. But part of me wondered if she was doing it out of guilt or fear of another misstep rather than genuine understanding. I wasn't angry anymore. That emotion had burned itself out. What lingered was something quieter, disappointment maybe, or caution, like when you discover a hairline crack in your favorite mug. You still use it, still love it. But now you're always a little careful when you pour something hot inside. One afternoon, I found myself texting Jackson again. Nothing deep, just a meme, followed by a quick, "By the way, I put your originals back in the frames. Just thought you should know." He replied a few minutes later, "Glad to hear it. They were always meant for you, man. Not for decor." That stuck with me. Not for decor. That was the heart of it, wasn't it? This whole thing hadn't been about the object, but about what it represented. Friendship, memory, vulnerability. It was personal, and somehow, it had been reduced to an aesthetic issue to be corrected. That's what hurt most. I'm not blameless either. Maybe I should have explained myself better to Lauren. Maybe I assumed she'd just get it the way I did. But in a way, I think I wanted that to be automatic, that she'd recognize how deeply something mattered to me without me having to map it out. Marriage doesn't always work that way. Love isn't mind reading. And respect, I've come to learn, is as much about the small things as the big ones. It's not just about showing up in a crisis or remembering anniversaries. Sometimes it's about leaving a blurry, pixelated photo exactly as it is, simply because someone you love asked you to. One evening, as we were getting ready for bed, Lauren paused at the door of my office. She looked at the shelf, then at me. "I still don't like how they look," she said, half smiling. I smiled back. "And I still don't care." She nodded, stepping inside and standing in front of the frames. "You know, I think what bothered me most wasn't even the images. It was that you didn't trust me not to mess it up. And then I went and proved you right." That was probably the closest we ever got to truly dissecting it. I stood beside her, looking at the same 3 frames I'd looked at 100 times now. Sometimes, I said, respect is about leaving things imperfect, even if you mean well. She reached for my hand, and I let her take it. We didn't solve everything that night. There wasn't a big romantic breakthrough or a teary hug. Just 2 people standing quietly, trying to understand each other a little better than yesterday. And maybe, in the end, that's all you can really hope for. So, what do you think? Was I being too sentimental? Or did Lauren cross a line by changing something that meant so much to me? If you were in my shoes, would you feel the same? Or do you see your side more clearly? Let me know in the comments. I really want to hear your thoughts. And if you felt something while listening, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. That way, I'll know I'm not alone out here, and that you're with me on this journey, one story, and one blurry photo at a time.